Good morning and welcome to our October 22nd Board of Supervisors meeting. Today we'll start off with the Pledge of Allegiance held by Supervisor Jaime De La Cruz from District Number 5.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Acknowledgement certificate of posting.
Mr. Chair.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
5-0. Presentations and recognitions. Present certificate of recognition to Judith Diaz, Assessment Clerk 3 with the Assessor's Office for her 30 years of service with the County of San Benito upon her retirement.
Yes. Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Wow, 30 years. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, I don't need to prepare any speeches in this one. This is more a personal thing than anything else. Judith, will you please come up? I just want to say a few comments, Mr. Chair, on the board and the members of the public, that one of the first people that I met in the county when I first got elected to supervisor was actually Judith, because she used to live in my district, and one time I went to her house and I was campaigning, and I got to know her, and I really did like her, and I didn't know that she actually worked for the county. I said, oh my God, now I'm noticed. But ever since, you've been very nice, cordial, professional. I'll go to your office, I'll talk to you, Tom. It's your mission statement that trickles down to your employees and is an indication of how Judy treats the public, and is most important, because Tom's department, where Judy works, is the starting point of where the public expects the customer service, and they actually ask questions other than what the department asks of other departments. And so they're the ones that lead the charge in our community, in which they ask the questions and interface with the public. So it gives me joy, and it's a pleasure, and at the same time sad, because you're gonna leave us. But I know you got better things to do, and rumor has that there might be a party pretty soon. So I'll definitely be there to celebrate the moment. So Judy, without further ado, I want to congratulate you on your 30 years working for the San Benito County Special and their Assessor's Office, and you had a great boss and a great team that worked around you. Congratulations, thank you.
Okay, I have a little something to say. Good morning to the board and to my employees and union members. It is with great gratitude and honor to accept the certificate of serving 30 years of service for this county from the Board of Supervisors. I started in 1989 in my 30s as a young single mother with two children to raise, and I thank God for opening a door of opportunity to be able to work in this community close to home and my children. Along the way, I have met many wonderful people and many good friends. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say a few words. Judy has been a great person to work with. She's been in the office for 30 years and had the privilege of working with her. I've been her boss for about 15 years now. And, Judy started in 1989, right after the Loma Prieta earthquake, and it was a pretty hectic time in the office. And at that time in the front office, we were losing people. They wouldn't stay there very long. And so we're kind of making bets that Judy probably lasts about a year or so, then she'll be gone. But she definitely proved us wrong on that part. She started as a typist clerk back then, and in 1989, there was no internet, really no email, very few PCs, so everything was done at the typewriter. Later on, she was promoted to assessment clerk, then senior assessment clerk, and one of her primary duties was property transfers. So she'd be the one that would determine if there was a reappraisable event, which meant a change of ownership. That property would go to the real property appraisers, and lo and behold, you get a new higher tax bill. And so when people came in the office, we'd always turn her to Judy and say, she did it.
Ah, you're the one.
But she's been an asset and a dedicated, very dedicated employee, and we just want to wish her the very best in her retirement. Thank you, Judy.
That takes us to the Health and Human Services Agency, T. Belton.
So good morning, Chair and Supervisors. Thank you so much for giving Public Health Services a couple of minutes of your time to talk with you about influenza and the flu season that is upon us again. Given influenza's unique seasonal pattern and nature of the virus itself, Public Health Services actually begins planning and implementing prevention strategies long before flu season begins every year. The challenge with influenza, as we know, is that we never know year to year when it's going to start. Sometimes it's as early as September and sometimes as late as November, December. So that presents the challenge in preparing. In fact, it looks like this year we're off to a bit of an early start for flu season. And as a somber reminder of the consequences of influenza, Santa Clara County has already reported 2 deaths this flu season due to influenza. So with a bit of historical perspective on the flu, it reminds us of the serious consequences of flu and the importance of prevention as we enter this year's flu season. This is the 101st year anniversary of the world's flu pandemic, the worst that we've ever seen in our history. In that year, it was estimated that about 500 million people in the world had influenza, with about 50 million deaths worldwide. And the United States saw about 675,000 deaths this year. So the Centers for Disease Control likes to use this historical perspective as a way to leverage the lessons from 1918 to prepare us for today's influenza challenges. So as you can guess, that's the influenza virus. It's kind of pretty, right? It's a little difficult to see that something that looks like that could actually wreak so much havoc, but it does. So as a quick reminder, influenza is a respiratory illness. It's not a stomach bug, and it's caused by the influenza virus specifically, also nicknamed the flu. It's very contagious, causes thousands of hospitalizations and deaths every year, even in mild years. Symptoms usually include fever, chills, cough, sore throat, runny, stuffy nose, muscle, body aches, headaches, being very tired. Some symptoms kind of overlap with that of a cold, but definitely influenza has some distinctive symptoms with very abrupt onset, extreme tiredness, headache, and chills that kind of distinguishes it from just a regular cold. So how does it spread? Coughing, sneezing, or talking, the virus is in the droplets. So when we cough, sneeze, talk, the virus can travel with those respirations. And keep in mind, sneezes can actually travel up to 6 feet. So you can understand why it's so easily spread. Also, when we touch surfaces with our hands that have been contaminated with the virus, we can get it that way. The virus can actually live on surfaces for several days. Symptoms can begin anywhere from 1 to 4 days after we've been exposed to the flu, but you are contagious starting about a day before symptoms show up and through 5 to 7 days after symptoms start. So this means that we can be contagious before we even know that we're sick, which makes it challenging when we're trying to prevent outbreaks from happening. So the best way to prevent influenza is, of course, with the annual flu vaccination. That is the Center for Disease Control's strongest recommendation for prevention. It's recommended for everyone 6 months of year and up. And as a reminder, even in years when the vaccine is not a perfect match with what's circulating, there is still cross-protection, and it still decreases hospitalizations, pneumonias, and other complications. And of course, covering your mouth when coughing, sneezing, and frequent hand washing is key. So just some quick facts. We recommend everyone 6 months and older get the vaccine. And we need to get it every year because it changes every year. You get it as soon as available. They're recommending that everyone get it before the end of October this year. Keep in mind, it takes about 2 weeks to become protected after you're vaccinated, so it's not immediate. And you cannot get the flu from the vaccine. It's an inactivated vaccine. And the vaccine contains 3 or 4 different strains to increase our protection. And how to treat. So if, unfortunately, you come down with the flu, treatment is rest, staying hydrated, treating your fever, and going to the doctor for antiviral medication as soon as possible. The sooner those antiviral medications are started, the sooner you'll start to feel better. So again, public health usually starts preparing way ahead of time. As just an example, last year we had a very long flu season, as did California, as did the rest of the country. And we had 2 distinct peaks, December and March, with about 600 deaths in California. San Benito County, fortunately, had no deaths, but we did have several severe hospitalizations, which included stays in the intensive care unit. So again, we just want to remind that public health does its best all year long to do surveillance, a lot of education. We put out advisories. We hold many flu clinics, including at the homeless shelter, whole person care, the food bank, et cetera. And of course, we plan and hold our countywide flu clinic every year. Speaking of which, our countywide flu clinic this year will be Tuesday, October 29th from 3 to 8 p.m. Open to all of the public. So we encourage everyone, if you have not received your flu vaccination by then, please come see us on the 29th. So with that, thank you.
What were the times again?
3 to 8 p.m. on the 29th.
And what's the location for that?
Veterans Hall.
Thank you.
Yes, of course. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Now we'll head to public comment. This is an opportunity to address the board on items of interest not appearing on the agenda. No action may be taken unless provided by government code section 5495 4.2. Is there any public comment?
First speaker is Robin Lynch.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Robin Lynch, and I've been an office assistant too for San Benito County Public Health Services for over 18 years. Our division offers invaluable services such as our annual flu clinic, car seat checkups, and various types of community outreach that promote public health and safety. I provide clerical support for our nurses, our epidemiologists, and our health education team. I truly appreciate what the board has already committed to help us. However, this simply isn't enough to help make ends meet. As you know, our county employees have been grossly underpaid for over a decade and still are compared to surrounding counties. In public health services alone, we've lost several employees in the last year due to them being forced to go to other counties for better salaries and benefits, such as fully covered health care. To this day, we are still understaffed and having to take on the extra work because no one wants to work in our county due to the uncompetitive wages. Without adequate staffing, public health will no longer be able to provide immunizations, health education outreach, or other vital collaborative services that our county relies on from us. To add insult to injury, our insurance rates continue to soar. Many of us have to have our spouse and or family on our insurance plans, resulting in us paying more than insurance costs than what we actually take home every pay period. While the narrowed network and high deductible plan will work out great for a few of us, there are also many of us whose doctors are not accepting these plans, and switching is not a viable option for the rest of us. In my case, I had to sign up for the narrowed network plan and add my spouse for 2020 due to his insurance not being accepted by San Benito County providers. Making this change is going to decrease my take-home pay almost $200 per pay period. My family has cut back on a lot of expenditures, and we're still barely making it. Just for the heck of it, compared my current salary to what I made back in 2015. Imagine my surprise when I discovered that after providing over 18 years of service and being maxed out at the G-step for over 7 of those years, I'm making just over $130 more per month, with my take-home pay being a whopping $33 more than I made 4 years ago. With housing, food, and medical costs continuing to rise, I'm not able to keep up with my bills, even though both my spouse and I are working full-time. Several of my coworkers are in similar situations, and a few of them have even had to go on Medi-Cal because they can't afford the insurance for their families. I believe that what SEIU is proposing is more than fair, and I support them wholeheartedly. I'm asking you, the Board of Supervisors, to put yourself in our shoes and ask yourselves if you would find our current wages and healthcare benefits acceptable. Please do the right thing by
Thank you.
investing in your county employees' wages and healthcare, which will, in
Thank you.
return, strengthen our local economy and workforce. Thank you.
Thank you.
Michael Silverman?
Good morning. Not all work is the same at the county. Some jobs pay overtime, other jobs, we don't get them. With no OT, no paid time off to sell back, how can we, the workers, absorb the healthcare cost increases? Be bold. Let us have that option, PTO, to sell it back to help us with these healthcare cost increases. Only 125 of our members, the union members, opted into the county's health care plan. The other 52% of the workers chose a Plan B. We just heard of one of them, their Plan B was Medi-Cal. They're a county worker. They should be on our county health care plan. Providing health care for employees is the employer's responsibility. It's not the union's. If less than half the workers opt into the county's health care plan, then the health plan is no longer a benefit, becomes a luxury. Right now, the workers, we have something to look forward to. It gets me excited. It's the comp study. Why? Because it'll allow our members to finally recover from the Great Recession. To do this responsibly, you must acknowledge that some of the workers are too far below the market rate. Other workers might be where they should be. Some may be above. Allow us, the union, to be a partner with you, with the county, and commit to placing the results and comp study process within our contract, our MOU. Otherwise, the comp study is nothing more than an expensive report that is on the bookshelf. What's our leverage right now? Well, we know that the managers and department heads were given the offer that we rejected, which were raises and cash. Workers, we're still waiting. We also know that there's a lawsuit going on with the retiree regarding health care. It's like we're being held hostage right now. We're left to absorb these health care increases. And as one of our members said when she just started working for the county, she knew what she was signing up for. But she didn't sign up for these health care cost increases. It really hits our family budgets hard, real hard. Right now,
Thank
our
you.
bargain team.
Thank you. That was 30
Okay.
minutes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pre-
Krista Azevedo.
What was the name? I'm sorry.
Krista Azevedo.
Hello, so I'm Krista Azevedo, and I'm an eligibility specialist 2 worker here at HHSA, and I am not used to speaking publicly, so bear with me. Basically, I help people with Medi-Cal, and I help them with CalFresh. I also help people who have questions about GA, which is General Assistance, and also CalWorks. Even though I don't work in those departments, I still have to know those answers to those questions so that when they call on our hotline, that I can answer those questions for them. There's also other things that we do besides that. Yesterday I met with a woman who is 80 years old, and she just took guardianship over her 2 young grandsons. They're about 10 and 8. She herself is on the system. She has ailments that keep her from even being able to walk. So she had to come in with an AR, someone who helps him, an assistant who helps her. And I'm looking at this woman, and she's telling me that she doesn't have, that the Medi-Cal was not working. I was able to fix that. I fixed it by the end of yesterday. The other problem she had was getting the help she needed for grievance for the children because they didn't have Medi-Cal and the doctors and behavioral health weren't working together. I don't know if anybody knows this, but there is no children's behavioral care, mental health. You have to go outside. So I told her, go to Get Straight Medi-Cal because that benefits the children the most. They can actually leave this county, go to another county, and get the mental health ability services that they needed. The other thing is my personal life. I also took custody of my own great nephew. And because I've been through this for a whole year, battling in Merced County where I live, because I commute here every day. So I was able to give her all the numbers that they needed for your regional centers, and it's not even here, it's for San Andreas Regional Center. For all those places, she didn't know that the schools offered mental health services themselves, that she could have been taken advantage of. So I gave her all the things that I had already done in my personal life and was able to give her in this life, and it's not even my job to do that, but I did it anyways. By the time she left, she gave me a hug, we were both crying. It was really emotional. And that's what I do for this county. Sorry. It was hard. Those kids won't be staying with her very long. She couldn't take care of them, but she stepped up like I did. I can't afford to live here because of my nephew and his needs. I get services better in Merced County, but I don't want to work in Merced County. I want to work here. This is the place that gave me a chance. I was on welfare. I was on welfare when I got hired here,
Thank you.
and I'm still on welfare now.
Thank you. Thank you.
Diana Sanchez.
Hello, all of San Benito County members. My name is Diana Sanchez, and I stand before you today with respect, integrity, honesty to myself, to those here in this room, and to all outside this room. I'd like to start with reciting the County Board of Supervisors mission statement. Quote, "The County Board of Supervisors will recognize the public trust it holds, will on all occasions conduct business with honesty, integrity, and respect, and will hold the organization of county government to the same standards." End quote. I recite this statement for a few reasons. First, to acknowledge all the Board of Supervisors, past, present, and future, for their arduous work and time committed to making our county a San Benito community we love to call home. Second, to remind us that it is with respect, integrity, and honesty that we are, have been, and will continue to be here for you, for us, and for all. And last, that the Board of Supervisors recognize that we, the workers of San Benito County, are putting our trust in your standards just as you hold them for us. I am an eligibility specialist of the Health and Human Services Agency. However, before that title, I am a single mother, an avid San Benito High School volunteer, a mentor and advocate in my community, and an ordinary woman doing my best to do the extraordinary to see my county of San Benito as a thriving and vibrant community. In my 4 years as an eligibility specialist, I have learned that it's not just about granting benefits, answering or asking questions, or even correcting cases that have been severely mutilated by the income and outgoing of newly trained staff. It's more the opportunity to go above and beyond our scope of work, to engage in conversations to assist the people we cohabitate with, and to provide the most outstanding service to our community with compassion, dignity, and respect. However, I have also learned that despite our commitment to our community, our going the extra mile for the people in poverty and sacrificing our own time to be with our families is undermined by the high cost of insurance rate, low pay wages, and extremely heavy casework or workloads. On September 26, 2019, you all agreed to a 3% raise, a $1,000 bonus, and 2 holiday closures. I ask, how does this benefit the people that go above and beyond their scope of work, that without hesitation will do the best they can to provide food, health coverage, cash, employment, other resources, and faithfully commit themselves to serve the community when a disaster strikes, even when they themselves are in need of food, health coverage, cash, another job, childcare, and other resources just to make ends meet? How are we government workers in the same community food bank lines, emergency service lines, and government assistant lines, just as those that are in poverty? This is absurd. Until we are given health coverage and a pay rate that is equally compared to our sister counties, we will continue to make our presence known. With this, I end by asking the Board of Supervisors, when you are gone and your
Thank you.
families are left
Thank you.
behind,
Thank you.
I ask who will be there to
Ma'am?
support your families and their
Thank-
times
thank
of
you.
need.
That's it.
We all go through lows and highs, and perhaps some of
Ma'am,
us may experience
ma'am,
more lows than highs.
Please.
But I tell
That's
you
enough.
this,
Hello?
if you or any one of your families
Ma'am?
are at their low, guess who will be going there for the next 7 generations? The workers
Can you
of San
please,
Diego County.
please, it's
Give
3
us
minutes.
what we deserve. You know what
Yeah.
you owe it to us. Thank you, and many blessings to all.
For our future speakers, it's 3 minutes, and I'll give you a 20-second stop, and please stop at 3 minutes for respect of everything. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Gina Valentine?
I'll give you like a 20-second warning,
I
okay?
appreciate that. Thank you. So, good morning, Chair, members of the board. My name is Regina Valentine, and I've worked for the COG office as a transportation planner for 3 years, where I also worked as an intern while earning my degrees. This year, I've had the pleasure of serving as a member of SAIU's bargaining team. I would like to acknowledge the support the board and our CAO has shown our employees in the past, including our recent efforts to try to reach an agreement that could work for our employees in the short term while we wait for the outcome of the county's compensation study. Excuse me. Unfortunately, it is clear that for our employees, the continued rising costs of healthcare and the cost of living is making it nearly impossible for us to hold on until long-term solutions can be implemented. While the county's contributions to our healthcare costs have remained fixed for many years, the cost to employees has not, and wage increases have not kept pace. Additionally, unfortunately, there is widespread skepticism of the county's commitment to take the necessary steps to implement the compensation study to stop the continued loss of employees we are experiencing, including the 20% vacancy rate provided in the county's third quarter fiscal report. What services do we deny to our residents when we cannot retain our workforce, not because they don't love their community, but because they can't afford to live on what the county is willing to offer? We believe that what we are proposing in our current negotiations is a wider support of our workforce. It is clear that we need to see a demonstration of the commitment from the county that we can move forward with a plan to address our employee retention issues. We hope that you'll strongly consider the direction we're trying to take, and we can continue to count on your support to reach an agreement that will best serve our employees and our county. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Veronica Lozano?
Good morning, Chairman and members of the board. Veronica Lezama with the Council of San Benito County Governments. I've been employed with the agency for the past 16 years, and we've definitely seen an increase in healthcare costs. For me, I continue to struggle with not taking other opportunities in other counties because I truly enjoy the work that I do here in my community, both as part of my job and part of the service that I give to my community. So I hope that the board really truly considers the proposal that the union has put forth, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. What was that?
Raymond Garcia.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Board of Supervisors. My name is Raymond Garcia. I'm an eligibility worker 2. I currently have been here for almost 2 years, and I manage a caseload of over 150 families who receive cash aid, welfare, and all the other programs that come with those, such as CalFresh and Medi-Cal. I really enjoy working for the County of San Benito. This work allows me to serve my community every day and to practice my personal beliefs and attitudes to help others. But the struggle has gotten very real. Since I started, I've had to work 2 jobs, sometimes 3 jobs. And I also do this on top of running a local nonprofit called JMM Dance Co., where we teach low-income children and children with special needs dance in the community here in Hollister and in San Juan Bautista. I know sacrifice personally, but I feel that our wages being so below market value, it's just asking too much of us. I've seen many good employees leave due to just leaving for higher wages over the short time that I've been here. I fear that the quality of care just can't be there when workers themselves are wondering how to feed their families and how to make ends meet. I ask you, Board of Supervisors, to please continue supporting our county and to support what the union is proposing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Daisy Uribe.
Good morning. I'm Daisy Uribe. I'm an eligibility specialist for the Health and Human Services Agency. I have been employed through the county for the past 5 years. In those last 5 years, I have had to move back to my mom's or to my parents' house because I wasn't able to afford my rent living here in Hollister. I became a single mom in the last 4 years of 4 kids who are active members in their community. They've all gone through Pop Warner sports. My son currently plays varsity football for the high school, and my second son will be attending high school next year and will probably be doing the same. I try to stay as close to Hollister as possible, but there has been times when I have had to move out of this county because I cannot afford to live here. The increase in health coverage has definitely taken its toll on my family to the point where this is the first year that I have actually had to remove my insurance through the county and actually apply for Medi-Cal benefits. It's very discerning when I am actually providing that service to the clients I serve. I've done it all within the county, within the agency. I've been an intake worker, so I see clients that come in, applying for services that, the county provides or the government provides. I've, done the continuing, so continue to keep up with the clients that are receiving, not only applied for the benefits, but also continue to be eligible for them, as well as I've been a worker for the Cash Aid Assistance Program. It's a very huge eye-opening experience when you yourself have been on that side of the desk, and I don't want to leave this county. I like working here. I like serving the people that I serve, as well as I'm teaching my children to be a part of a special community. Hollister is something
you will not find anywhere else. We are very, very, very unique. I've lived in different counties. I've seen different areas, and Hollister is just very unique. It's a small town feel that you don't get elsewhere. I like going to my local, coffee shop, and the girl already, oh, do you want the usual? You don't get that in a bigger community. So I'm asking you to please reconsider the proposal that the union is proposing, just because it is something that we are in dire need, because our health coverage cost is just not enough. With the 3%, it barely offsets that difference. Thank you.
Thank you.
Greg Greer.
Good morning, Council. My name is Greg Greer. I work for San Benito County Behavioral Health as a substance abuse counselor. I've been here for 5 years now. I really enjoy what I do. I have the opportunity to work with people who have substance abuse problems and help reunite families and put things back together and get things back in order so that people can be productive members of society again and not be a tax burden. I find myself in a precarious situation because I came here, I'd worked in the SAP program, substance abuse program, in the prison for 10 years, and the opportunity in 2014 was provided for me to come here. My goal when I first came here, because the insurance was lower at that time, was to eventually move to Hollister and be part of Hollister, because I had been working 2 jobs for that time. What happened though is, within the first year, I finally caught up on all my bills. I was like, man, I'm $400 ahead. I can make some payments and put some money away for my kids. And then a month later, as soon as I got that done, the insurance went up $400. It went up $400. I was like, oh my God, $400 in just 1 year? Well, that wasn't the end of it. The next year, it went up $147. I'm getting my G-steps, and I'm almost a G-step now. I should be getting that soon. But even with the G-step, I've added it up. At the end of the year, I'm going to be $137 ahead. I'm not going to be able to get the total insurance that I get now. I'm going to have to do the narrowed plan, which eliminates my wife's doctors. My kids will still be able to go to their doctors, but it eliminates my wife's doctors. I don't know what can be done about the situation, but I really enjoy being here. I've seen a lot of people come and go, just like everybody else in my position, man. There's 3 or 4 people short right now in my section where I work. So any type of help, I back up fully what we want as a union, and any other help that we could get as insurance would be great too. I also applied for Medi-Cal too, and I missed it. I made like $100 and something too much to get the Medi-Cal. So I was like, oh man, this is not good. So it's really humbling to be in that position after all this time. And I appreciate any help that you get, and I'm really hoping that something happens. My plan is still to come here. I too work 2 jobs. I was really hoping to not have to work on the weekend and spend more time with my kids. And it's not happening though. Not with the rising cost of insurance and all the other factors driving from here to Salinas, gas prices going up. I'm having a difficult time. And so any type of support that we could get from you would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you repeat the name, please? Megan.
Okay. My name is Megan Crable, and I'm an employment counselor with San Benito County at the America's Job Center of California. I work primarily with businesses and assisting in their recruitment needs. I've been in my current role for 5 years, and I am one of 2 employees in my classification. Within my first year, I had the highest seniority, and over my 5 years, I've had 5 different counterparts. SHRM, the Society of Human Resources Management, reports that every time an employer has to replace an employee, it costs an average 1/3 of the employee's salary. our department has been unable to retain employees, with the biggest reason for departure being wages and healthcare costs. In my role, I work with businesses who are coming to the county. They know by paying a living wage, they are most successful in retaining qualified talent. I hope when this board discusses economic development and speaks with companies about doing business in San Benito County, that we ourselves, the county, become the model of what we want employment to look like in San Benito County. One of the many ways businesses do that is by paying a competitive wage and by offering affordable health care. The Wall Street Journal last week released an article referencing healthcare costs in America. The average employee cost for a family plan in America is $502 a month. The cheapest PPO plan that we hear about, the narrowed network, will cost a San Benito County employee for 2020 an employee plan $891 a month. That's almost double the average. Just yesterday, I posted a position the county is currently recruiting for, Eligibility Worker 1 or Eligibility Specialist 1. The starting pay for that position is $15.91. I can go to In-N-Out Burger, Starbucks, McDonald's. The starting wage will be $15. How will that new hire afford the health insurance? Our overall mission at Community Services and Workforce Development with San Benito County is to assist in client self-sufficiency. We advocate for training for in-demand careers, subsidized housing, and utility assistance. And many of our recipients of these programs are our coworkers at Health and Human Services. That's correct. Many county workers are qualifying for the very benefits they administer. In closing, I recently saw the county has a new HR website and a slogan on there: work here, thrive here. I ask if you believe in that statement, or if the employees of San Benito County believe in it. I hope this board can support us, the San Benito County's employees, to get to a point where that statement holds truth. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your input. I appreciate it. Can move on to department head announcement, starting off with our CAO, Ray Espinosa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I'd like to invite up Edgar Nolasco. He's our deputy CAO.
Good morning, Chairman, members of the board. I just wanted to let you guys know that we have launched the Emergency Services Manager with the recent departure of Kevin, and given our recent earthquake activity, I think it's very prudent of us to get someone here that will help us with any emergency that may happen. Also with RMA, the administrative office is working with our RMA director, Harry, to see how we can fill some of his vacancies and how we could streamline some of his positions for recruiting.
Thank you. Any questions?
I'd like to invite up our interim OES manager, Chris Gano.
Good morning, Chris Mangano, interim manager with the Office of Emergency Services. Just wanted to provide a brief update to you. We do have a tabletop exercise that will be held November 14th. It's in conjunction with Public Health. It is a state mandated exercise that's held annually. That will be followed by a week later with the functional exercise, again with Public Health. I have been working with the Fire Safe Council, presented to them last Thursday, and will continue to work with the Fire Safe Council as the interim manager. We are moving forward with the move of the EOC and our offices to the airport. Build out is happening now, and we should have a draft lease to legal in the next few days. Met with Damon Felice last week, and he is also helping to coordinate that. We have some training courses that Kevin had discussed prior to his departure, and we are moving forward with finding a trainer to instruct those, and hope to have some classes scheduled in the next few weeks. And then lastly, we have our CERT class. The next one will begin in January. So we have a lot happening in our office.
Thank you.
So that's a brief update. Any questions?
Mr. Chair, if I may. I had the opportunity last week to take a tour of the San Juan Canyon area.
Yes.
And thank you for mentioning that you're meeting with the Fire Safe Council. I know that most of the residents up there are members of that, and they drive that committee. One of the suggestions that they had was, well, they had several, but if there is an ability to have a cert specially for the canyon, or make kind of like a break off, and they had a lot of good thoughts and ideas behind that. So I was wondering if
I'm meeting with them
perhaps-
today at 3 o'clock.
perhaps you could talk about that and CAO. It seemed to make sense because they have such a laser focus on that area, and they live there and they care about it. So if there's anything I could do, I hate to say this, but after I was elected, I got a call from them and said, "Hey, did you know we're in your district?" And I said, "I did not." So Supervisor Patello and I share that area. He has the lion's share of it, but anything I can do to support them, I would appreciate it. I think there's a pretty high risk of fire danger there. Thank you.
Definitely. Thank you. Lastly, there is going to be another PG&E outage this week. Should start tomorrow about 6 p.m. It is up north. We are not going to be affected. It's mainly Sonoma, Mendocino, Lake County, and then it will go up Highway 80 and Highway 50 into the Sierras. So San Benito is not on the map for that. If anything changes, I will send an email.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. I'd like to go ahead and invite Lauren Hull. She's our management analyst in administration.
Good morning. We wanted to let the board and the public know that the county is now on social media. We have a Facebook, a Twitter, and an Instagram. Our Twitter is at San Benito County, as is our Instagram. And our Facebook is at cosb.admin. So we're trying to just get the message out about what we do and the services we offer. So if you want to go follow our page, we'll have news and updates available for the public there. I also wanted to give just a quick legislative update. October 13th was the last day for the governor to sign or veto any bills from the 1920 legislative session. So SB 277 was a beneficial veto, as some of you may know. It would have changed the way our SB 1 funding was allocated for road projects, to rely more heavily on population size instead of a competitive grant process. But the governor vetoed that, saying that it would have a disproportionate impact on small urban and rural communities. There were also some vetoes related to the Public Records Act. SB 518 would have eliminated the use of settlement agreements in lawsuits regarding Public Records Act requests, and AB 1184 would have required local agencies to preserve communications for 2 years, but those were both vetoed. As far as things that were passed, housing was a big topic. The governor signed over 18 bills related to housing, the biggest of which was SB 330, which prohibits local agencies from creating rules that inhibit housing production. So things like streamlining the permitting and approval process, prohibiting net loss in zoning capacity, and limiting the fees that can be collected after a project is approved. So we will be having a more in-depth presentation about the housing bills specifically at a later date, but that's just a quick update of what's kind of been going on in the legislature. Okay.
Thank you, Lauren. And Lauren's been handling our social media and our legislative items as a management analyst and admin. So thank you, Lauren. Appreciate that. I'd like to invite up Nora Conte. She's our librarian. She has an update for your board announcement.
Good morning, board members, members of the public, and those citizens that are watching us at home. I have an update for you. This is on the library feasibility and public engagement. As per your vote and direction of the Board of Supervisors on July 24th to enter into a feasibility study, listening to the community regarding our library needs and solutions, we are proud and honored that the Board of Supervisors unanimously adopted the resolution for a new county library and resource center. Our library needs, as we've heard from the community, are spaces for community meetings, centers for homework and job center help, also senior citizen services, youth services, and a 21st century library, and a lot more, of course. We have just begun planning for the feasibility study that will take place over the next few months. A large part of this engaging the community regarding our library needs and ways to ensure a new library resource center for our future. We will be conducting an ad hoc committee meeting as well as a larger stakeholder community meeting to continue discussing our new library resource center needs and solutions to address them. Results from the feasibility study will be brought back to you as the governing body of the library department later this year, likely in December. We will keep you abreast regarding the larger stakeholder community meetings, date and time. So that's just a brief update. I have a couple of other announcements. I'll be quick about this. We applied for a grant from the Pacific Library Partnership, and we were awarded the first $15,000. This has not been done before, but I'd like Aaron Baxter to come up for a moment. Aaron Baxter is second in command at our library, and I've always instructed my staff to be proactive, try to be responsive to the needs of the community, and that leadership can come from up and down the organization because we all have ideas that we can present and take action on. Our community, our youth in our community need books to be able to attend college. Many of them do not have the funds to attend. So we are going to, Erin, step up. She wrote a grant for $15,000, and this money will be used to purchase college books. We're in partnership with the station, Gavilan Station here, also with the Gavilan Library as well. So we will be having materials on our shelves as well as at the Briggs Building, where students, college students, or those that would like to go to college, will have that opportunity because the books will be available. Even at renting college material, just off the top of my head, just to rent a statistics book was $92. So it is expensive. So I want to acknowledge Erin for being proactive and taking a look at the needs of the community, bringing them forward to me as well, and working together to make this happen. We're going to try to match this because our goal is to bring in $30,000. We will be coming back for your approval to accept this $15,000, but that's a huge step so that our children, our youth, will be able to have those books without the impact of the financial burden on themselves and their families. So we're really happy with this. Thank you, board members, and as always, I appreciate you.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes.
I had a question because you had mentioned, Nora, that we supported. Did you mention the feasibility study? Because I just wanted to make it clear for the record because we supported funding the feasibility study, but we never necessarily supported, and I don't want to speak for the board, but I know the feasibility study was just focused on trying to find out if the public was even interested in supporting it, and
That's exactly what it's for.
yeah. So I just wanted to make it clear because I don't want to make it sound like we're supporting basically a bond measure because ultimately that's what it's going to lead to, or possibly lead to the conversation.
This is to have a broad community conversation about library needs and solutions to be able to reach what it is that the community would like to have.
Fair.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. I just wanted to make it clear. That's all.
As usual. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nora. I'd like to announce to the board and to the public that we underwent recruitment for our Health and Human Services Director, and we actually moved forward with hiring an individual, and I'd like to go ahead and ask her to come up to the podium here. Her name is Tracy Belton. She was the Deputy Director in Health and Human Services. So we wanted to announce it to the public, announce it to your board, and just I wanted her to say a few words and congratulate her.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good morning. Good morning, members of the board and the public. I'm excited about my new role here as the Director for the Health and Human Services Agency, and I look forward to leading the agency for the betterment of our community. I have worked for the agency for over 22 years, and I enjoy assisting the families and individuals we serve, and look forward to working with the board, staff, our community partners, and to continue to grow the agency. We believe individuals and families can grow and change. We believe in the community that supports its neighbors and that everyone can feel safe, connected, and self-sufficient. Please feel free to come by our office and reach out to myself or any of our staff. Most of the people who spoke here today were my staff. You can see the passion that they have behind the work they do. So if there's anything we can do to assist you, reach out. And thank you all for trusting me to lead and advance the agency. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. I believe that's all the announcements from the department heads. I just wanted to say a couple of words. I had the privilege to attend a CIO meeting last week with all the CIOs in the state, and we had some very informative discussions. One of the discussions I'd just like to highlight for you was presented by Mark Pisano. He's a professor of practice at Sol Price for USC. And he really explained and went into detail about the future fiscal expectations of government. I thought it was very interesting talk that he presented. And what it highlighted was the fertility rate and it dropping and the relationship that it has to how we actually sustain financial stability within government. That's our kind of our bread and butter, so to speak. And one of the things that he highlighted was that it's dropped from 3.8 to 1.9 with regards to fertility. So with that, there's some real big impacts and direct correlation to taxes and how we actually receive money in government. I'll probably be coming back to your board at a later date, maybe through our board retreat next year, to look at that, look at strategies. And some of the things that he presented, I think, were really great with regards to enhancing infrastructure, financial districts, and other options that we can possibly look at to address what's on the horizon, so to speak, because of the baby boomers are all, and now we have the millenniums, and we really don't have as many people to put money into the system, and that's where we receive most of our money. So we're kind of reaching a crescendo where it's been very, very difficult and more difficult to operate government than 10 years ago or 20 years ago.
So just so I understand this, 3.8 to 1.9 is the average household. Is that correct?
That was the fertility
You said
rate.
3.8 to 1.9, so the average
Dramatic
household is
change in the fertility rates over the last 30 years. So basically, it's been cut in half.
So that equates to households. So if the average was 3.8 people living in a house, now it's 1.9.
That's correct. And so now all of a sudden, as they get older, they put into the system. Well, there's less people to put into the system. Exactly. So that's becoming a very big issue at the state level, national actually. And there was a lot of international items that they discussed, the impacts that it has financially. China has actually uplifted the one child per family, and they're not even getting that now because of the fertility rates, because there's a growing number of people in the workforce, but the population is not growing. So there's a lot of interesting things that I learned. I just wanted to share that one thing with you. I thought it was important, especially tying to government and our finances. So
thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Go to board announcements. We'll start off with Supervisor Hernandez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'll try to be brief, but yeah, I didn't have a whole lot going on, but the things that I was a part of, that was pretty substantive, I believe. We had a Vets Commission meeting where we're moving forward with trying to see what it would take to renovate that park. We're still ongoing with the tax sharing agreement, so I can't really comment too much on that. But one of the things that stood out to me is I had a chamber meeting with the Chamber of Commerce, and they have lofty ideas about tourism and stuff, which I think is a good idea. But it really stood out to me in my mind that we're really drawing at straws trying to come up with opportunities with limited resources. I know even just from the comments made earlier, it's like there's limited resources to produce the benefit that the community needs, and it just really stands out to me with struggling infrastructure. Our roads are really lacking. You know, the whole conversation about the population, but we still have many families living in one home, which is starting to be a big changing element in our culture, and that's because of for a lot of different reasons. I believe it really stands out to me that there needs to be a focus on business, and I've been trying to be very focused on business, and that's what the conversation was. The only thing, to be fair and honest, I struggled with is, you know, I believe when you have a 501c6 status, it minimizes your ability to be focused. You know, it kind of leans itself towards being more of a political organization besides just a business organization. And I could use one example, and I know that I was invited to go to a business advocacy council meeting, and you know, going there, I thought I was going to hear about business advocacy, but all I heard is about growth management ordinances and about Measure G and all these other things, and I thought, this is not business to me. You know, this is policy. And I'm not saying we shouldn't understand that, but as a business, it really stood out to me that there's not a strong enough focus, and I think that's why our business community is struggling. So with that said, I want to encourage the chamber and even the likes of the HDA to be very focused on business and think about what it means to be focused. You know, I would support them if that, you know, with any venture when it comes to business. So, and then I also attended on August 10th a town hall. I was there to be proud of the fact that I've been a part of so many good things that our county has been working towards. And it was, you know, it's tough when they give you 2 minutes to try to talk about everything you've done. Granted, it's been only 8 months. I feel like I've been involved in a lot. I've been really proud of a lot of what we've been doing in general. The social media stuff I thought was really exciting, revamping our website. The transparency with open.gov, the goal of transparency with our budget, you know, the sports complex, which is definitely in my mind an ADC component. It's a revenue generator. You know, sales tax is what we need. And then you know, one of the questions that I was asked that really caused me to think a lot was, what are the issues or the concerns? And one of the things that I said, and with Assemblyman Rivas there, was I struggle with the reality that the state is to a certain extent trying to impose its will on local communities and taking away local authority. And you know, it was mentioned using the judicial process to try to enforce planning, and that worries me. I think that if you're not engaging with your communities to come up with solutions, then you're really not coming up with solutions, because you're separating them from the solution, and that doesn't make any sense to me. So I know that there's a lot of legislative bills that came forward focused on housing. And it's a funny dynamic, because San Benito County is struggling with how many houses it has, because as much money, you know, the impact fees that we get, it's relative, because if that money that we get is so minimal, the impacts felt aren't there. We don't have the infrastructure that we need. So again, getting back to the topic of business, or to a certain extent trying to increase our pie for the county, I think when it comes down to what we've been doing, what I'm proud of is, you know, like I said, not only the sports complex, but coming up with different conversations to try to support businesses, and ultimately at the end of the day, trying to get the county to be able to not just be more sustainable, but to support the needs of our community, even our employees. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Supervisor Gilliard?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll start with the forum briefly. Thank you. I wasn't planning on saying a whole lot, but Peter had mentioned that, and I forgot about that. Supervisor Hernandez, sorry. We were invited to a forum for Benito Link, and it was myself, Supervisor Hernandez, and Assembly Member Rivas. And I'm going to read this list really briefly, because maybe not everybody had the opportunity to be there. But here are some of the accomplishments that the county team, all the hard work that you've all been doing out here in the audience. I wish everybody else was still here, that the chair has led us through this last year, and then that us board members have largely supported and helped with. It's critical. I mean, there's a lot of stuff on here, so get ready. I'm going to read it quick. Kind of just in no particular order, we just recently implemented OpenGov, and that's in progress right now to have more accountability and openness for our budget. Purchase policy streamlining, hiring process streamlining, CSAs. We've done a ton of work on CSAs and documented that work via resolution for future boards and future property owners. These roads that we've been working on, we've actually repaved some roads completely. We've done some emergency potholing. We started our Measure G quick start projects, got those rolling. Grand jury, we restored the grand jury to where it was prior to 2015 and actually increased the budget by over 75%. Airbnb, we went after and tracked down TOT that was missing from the county. Thank you to Planning Commissioner Gibson on that one. Bridge work, all the bridge work on the 5 federal projects is back on track. EDC, we've in partnership with the city, the majority of the city council and us unanimously had supported the EDC for $200,000 for 5 years. And the list is not overarching or covers everything. These are some of the highlights that stood out to me, and I think that these things are really important and they're going to make a huge impact down the road. And I'm not up here trying to tell everybody that we deserve any credit. As a matter of fact, I believe it's our team, all of you out there sitting there. Everything I mentioned here took dozens, if not 20, 30, 40, hundreds of hours of work. So I just sincerely appreciate everything that you guys have been doing. And I mentioned that on the forum. I wasn't planning on saying that today, but I thought it was important to go over some of those accomplishments. And I'm sure the chair will be wrapping up the year and talking about all the accomplishments that the board has done, but those are some that I had noted. We had a meeting with Jimmy Panetta at the Business Council. He talked about opportunity zones, talked about economic development. We talked about struggling in the infrastructure and finances of the federal government and trying to figure out ways that we can work together to get some of those items. One of the success stories happened to be in the city, but I think it impacts us all, a $5 million federal grant for a taxiway project at the airport, which is a big deal. And that helps us bring in a different class of planes and more utilize our airport once that project's done. So I was happy to learn about that. We had a COG meeting. I'll let Supervisor Botello kind of summarize that. The big deal out of that was Prop 277. Lauren had mentioned it earlier. It was a really big deal. We spent a lot of time, COG Director Mary Gilbert and myself, and I went to Sacramento several times and actually was fortunate enough to have an in-person meeting with the governor. I'll be honest with you, you guys have heard me say this probably 500 times, so I'm not going to say it again. But he held true to his word. He looked us right in the eye and said he was not going to change the way the funding was allocated. We had heard that all changed because of politics, and it didn't. So I wanted to, wherever the camera is, look at it and say thank you to the governor for that particular item. That was a really big deal for our county. And one last thing I'd like to have agendized possibly in the future, Mr. Chair, if we could, is last night the Hollister City Council adopted a resolution in support of the Keeping California Safe 2020 Act. And essentially what that is just a 2-second modification. We can have a report brought back if we all agree, is to modify Prop 4757 and a little bit of AB 109 to talk about how we can bring back some accountability into the criminal justice area. It's endorsed by the California Police Chiefs Association and many others. And this has to do with holding some folks accountable that, we're not talking about little crimes, we're talking about major crimes, and kind of retaking a look at that. So that's happening. Maybe we can have our team look at that and see if it's something we can support. Please. Thank you.
Supervisor Dela Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, last week Supervisor Medina and myself attended the Affordable Low-Income Housing Committee. We're trying to bring some progress and some ideas to our community, how we could help low-income members of our community. It's a very difficult subject in light of all these amendments and regulations and approvals that are coming down from the state of California, and then the perception and the feeling of San Benito County residents where they're expressing the view that, we don't want any more growth in this community. It's going to be a real challenge. We also had an audit committee this morning to discuss about trying to make sure that we meet our audit on time, and I want to thank Joe Paul and his entire staff for this year. It seems like we're actually going to be on time, and we might actually beat last year. So let's cross our fingers. I hope it's online. And thank you, Joe, for your staff for working hard, and all the other departments that are also, because there are key players to the audit. Otherwise, there's so many triggers that will happen. For example, if we don't have an audit on time, we won't be able to get housing allocation from the state and federal. Just other issues that I can't even think of that if it's not meant. I want to thank that. Also, Mr. Chair, I know we've been talking about all these resolutions and signatures and all these mandates has been coming down from the state of California. And I'll say it now. I've always said it. I feel the state of California is no friend of San Benito County. I honestly believe that, and I still do believe that today. Mr. Chair, with your blessing, I'd like to have an item on the agenda to discuss all the propositions that have been approved at the state of California, to make a presentation to the board and to the public what the impact is to our community, what we are exempt from and what we are not exempt. Because I want to hear it from the professionals, and I want the public to hear it from the professionals, and get rid of all these rumors. I just, once and for all, I hear two sides of the story, and I'm tired of it. I want to hear the truth, and I want the public to hear it too, and I want a professional. Mr. Chair, with your blessing, I really like to have that an item, and soon, before the end of the year.
November 19th, is that possible, or is that too soon?
It's possible. Why don't we do that, or if we can't get it, then the first meeting in December, the only meeting in
Let's
December.
commit to it now, if you don't mind.
Okay, it's November 19th.
November 19th or December, November 19th?
And it depends on, I guess the question would be, when you ask professional, because Lauren is actually doing the work on this.
If it's Lauren, I'm
Okay, because if we had to go out and get somebody, that was the reason why, the caveat, I was,
And Jaime will spearhead it.
Lauren, with the partnership with
Yes.
Jamela, maybe
Yeah.
with the house.
And
Yeah, we
and you can
were
help them out
planning
too.
to come back anyways to your board, especially on the housing element.
Well,
Yeah.
being
But
that
we'll
I'm
do
looking
that.
at the lady right here, November 19th, is that attainable? Thank you, ma'am.
We'll get it in.
And then one final thing, Mr. Chair, I just want to congratulate and thank you for having a professional meeting this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. We will go to Supervisor Patello.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, speaking about the beginning of the meeting, that's somewhat sobering, having our county employees who do so much work come in and tell some of their personal stories. And, you know, we only have so much of a pot to work with, and, you know, we're trying to make this work for everyone. And it's been that way for a number of years, and I know we're taking some steps to have a long-term relief. And, you know, I firmly believe that economic development and job creation and business creation is the answer for San Benito County. And I know this board has worked very hard towards that goal, and I think we all have to realize that administratively and our staff, our management staff, needs to move economic development projects quickly and efficiently, and we're, you know, develop the tax base to support our employees is really, really important, and it's been our goal. Yeah, this last Saturday I attended a fundraiser for the United Way, and it was great to see the major employers of our county there supporting an organization that provides funding and so much good for a lot of our nonprofits, and that's what it's about. It's about jobs, it's businesses, and then you get that support, and hopefully we have good public-private partnerships being established. And you know, I was happy to see Supervisor Gilio there at the fundraiser. It was a pleasure seeing him, and you know, the chairman goes to a lot of events with Supervisor Gilio, and they're pretty close. And I discovered why the chairman is. You know, hangs pretty tight with Supervisor Gilio at these type of things. Supervisor Gilio was first in line for the food. And I thought, doggone it, next event I'm gonna hang close to Supervisor Gilio so I could get to the food line quicker. But
I wonder where you're going with that.
Yeah.
First in line. Yeah, I'm not gonna get in front of you either, Supervisor Gilio. But anyhow, Supervisor Gilio and I also attended a COG meeting this past week, and the COG formally took a position of opposition on the roundabout at 25 and 156, and offered some very good suggestions within the resolution to try to have a positive message as well, that this community does want to be a partner with Caltrans. We want safe roads and intersections for our traveling public, and hopefully some good will come out of that. I'm optimistic. I still always stay optimistic. And we also had a report on strategizing the Measure G funding and options as far as how we're going to deliver these projects. And I know our RMA director is working very hard with our staff to develop, a Highway 25 widening project that is deliverable. What we have on the books right now, we're short. It's not. So hopefully we'll be able to work with Caltrans and the region to develop a plan that will get a good project in, and soon. Lastly, I was made aware of a couple of complaints that I received from the Preserve Our Rural Communities group, that pork group that's been out getting a referendum, and specifically Miss Gina Paulini, she's a resident of Monterey County, but she filed a complaint and a letter to our county counsel's office on October 21st, indicating that I violated the Brown Act, and also submitted a complaint to the FPPC that I have a conflict of interest owning property in or around the commercial nodes, and all of that is, of course, false. But we are going to respond with Preserve Our Rural Counties has alleged in a letter sent on October 21st to county councils that I violated a Brown Act, and I will be making a press release fully to address these false allegations in the next day or two. The county council will also issue a formal response to this in a letter. And so I certainly want the public to be aware of what's going on, and I'm completely transparent as far as what is happening in my district. Thank you.
Thank you. Move on to the consent agenda. Is there any items that the board wishes to pull?
Mr. Chair, I'd just like to pull out number 15.
15?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any items the public wishes to pull? Seeing none, bring it back to the board.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the consent agenda as written minus number 15.
Second, Mr. Chair.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
5-0. This brings up to number 15, Resource Management Agency.
Harry?
Yes.
This person will fill a full-time capacity for the county?
He is working, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Mr. Felice is working part-time for us in order to complete many of the projects. We're in the process of recruiting the permanent position for the project management position, but in the absence of that, we can't just drop the project. So he's been very instrumental in moving along a number of the projects that are underway, including the jail project.
Because
so we'd like to
With the
continue his employment until such time as we.
With the original contract and then the amendment to second, we're looking at about $210,000 a year position. You can't find someone at that range?
Again, the positions don't pay at that level, so we're using consultant in this case. And this is the case with the other consultants.
What's the going rate for capital program
I
managers?
believe the salary range is in the $95,000 to $100,000 range. Very difficult to fill that. We've had 2 recruitments out already.
Wow.
We're trying.
It's just that we're paying a penny for temporary. That's my concern.
We are, I recognize that, and it's unfortunate, but we're blessed to have somebody that's very competent and is doing the work and getting projects finished for us. And so we just can't do without that position.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair.
I'd like to add to that. This is not to exceed, right? So
Correct.
we're hoping and we're monitoring and making sure that we are getting the best out of this individual.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Edgar?
Chairman, members of the board, I just wanted to add that like Harry said, we did recruit twice for this and we failed to receive any decent applicants. As part of this contract, we will also, we would hire someone in place. Simultaneously, we'll be relaunching the recruitment to see if we get any new interest in the position, so we can have a permanent person here in the county.
Maybe the job description is just not matching what you're looking for, or maybe the job description it doesn't warrant it what we want.
We looked at everything, and we got some applications, but they weren't fit for the county, or they weren't what we were looking for.
Yeah, bring it back to the board. Any further questions? What's the wish of the board?
Mr. Chair, make a motion to approve.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
5-0. This takes us to our, or would you like to take a break?
Yeah, that'd be a good
I'm gonna use the
idea.
restroom.
Hold a public hearing, the County Administrative Office, Ray Espinosa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to go ahead and pass this to our county counsel, Barbara Thompson. She's actually the one that did most of the work on this particular item, so Barbara.
The county has the board has the opportunity to purchase more than 6 acres on Buena Vista Road. The purchase price is going to be $450,000, of which $385,000 will be a cash payment and $65,000 will be a donation. The purchase price will increase to $396,500 if the house that's existing on the property is demolished during escrow at Granite Rock's sole cost. However, if they were able to remove it to a different property, then there would be no increase in the purchase price. After this agreement is signed, the county will open escrow with a $5,000 deposit. The planned closing date is December 9th. This will be brought back to the board in November or December to approve removal of all contingencies. The property is a long-term investment in an area that's close to the city of Hollister where growth is occurring. This property could be used for affordable housing, a park, or even mitigation land for development elsewhere. It's expressly made contingent upon the Board of Supervisors' approval of satisfaction of all contingencies. And I'm available for any questions. Basically, it's open land at the present time besides that one house that would be removed.
Just for the record, this requires 4/5 of a vote.
For the transfer of contingencies, yes, it does.
Yes, ma'am. Is there any public comment? See none, bring it back to the board. Is there any comment from the board, or what is the wish of the board?
I've obviously been involved with these conversations, but I'm trying to understand at that point what is the purpose of the property if we have a game plan for, or do we have a game plan for this property?
I should state that there's no funding available at the present time, and there's no current plan for development of that property. So this would be a purchase that would be bought by the county and held until some sort of grant funding is developed and a plan for that purchase property is developed. So it could be used for, and we could address that at a future time because the board has not determined whether that property would be used for a park, whether it be used for future workforce housing, or future affordable housing, or for mitigation land. Any specific purpose, it's an opportunity that doesn't come along that often of buying property in that area, in an area where growth is occurring. But before any sort of a project approval that would involve any sort of development of that property, there would have to be a CEQA process and probably a general plan amendment and a zone change. So there's going to be land use development entitlements that would have to incur. So right now, this is just, agricultural land that the county would be buying and holding at this time until further development of a project is developed.
Actually, Mr. Chair, Barbara, you just... Mike. Oh, I apologize. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, actually, Barbara, that's an interesting question what you say, because you're saying we know nothing right now. It's going to have to go through a general plan process. And I know, I've gone to quite a few city council meetings, and I'm not going to put anybody, I'm just going to put it as a group, and even to the degree we, the Board of Supervisors, even when I served on LAFCO and COG, I always had a response, well, it's been approved already in the past. So what has been approved in the past is right now, today. This is the starting point. So if we approve this project today, if we approve this acquisition today, it's basically guarantees that we're going to build something there. And so I have some issues on that, and I'm not ready to support this as it is right now. I talked to a couple members in my district. Actually, I was walking that part of the neighborhood yesterday, and I expressed them, what do you think of the county purchasing the idea? And they were concerned that some were saying it might be a park. And when I said, hey, that's a wonderful idea. We're finally going to have a park on the west side of Hollister. And then a secondary concern, it came up, and they feel that you might actually create more of a homeless issue out there because the river's down there. And so you might have more homeless members of the community on that side of the park. And so we're about to enter into an investment which can have derivative effects down the road and which we don't even know of. And so I'm cautious. I really am cautious today on supporting this. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I'm very much in favor of this because sitting here, over the years, we've tried to partner with, different nonprofit organizations to, for affordable housing units. Time from time, one of the big things that we're concerned about is also, gosh, I'm looking for that word, intermediate housing for the homeless program, transitional housing sites. These are good people, went through certain, things to get their life in order, but they still kind of lack the ability for that. And this is a piece of property that I think we're getting a reasonable bargain on. Maybe we sell it at some point in the future as surplus property for another piece of property that suits those other needs a little bit more closely. I'm looking at it as more of a business deal that gives us flexibility to meet other needs in the future. It doesn't necessarily have to be developed there, but it may be developed someplace else. And this is to give us the resources to be able to develop some sort of project in the future. Another thing that I think a future board is to be looking at, not me, but a future board, and some of the concerns that I have is the high cost of housing. We heard from a couple of our employees this morning that one moved back with their mother or family and couldn't afford the housing. Another one moved to Merced. And, why aren't we starting to look for workforce housing like the private industry is looking at? In agriculture, Assemblyman Rivas just passed a bill that made things a little bit easier for the ag industry to develop some housing for their key employees. And, you got to have, all those type of bare minimal essentials for a workforce. And why can't we be looking at maybe employee housing? You work for San Bernardino County, maybe you live in this area, and develop something like that. It's just a thought, just an idea. And but there's nothing other than purchasing a piece of property at a price that I think is pretty reasonable for that area. And that's why I'm going to support this.
Mr. Chair?
Good.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, so I was cautious, and we've had conversations about this, and I was cautious as well during the negotiations process. But I got to tell you, so I think about it this way. Think about it as Supervisor Patello mentioned, as a business decision. We've been doing things as a county for as long as I've lived here, to my knowledge, and I'm not saying that it hasn't worked, but we heard from our folks today that we need to change. We need a different mindset. We need to think of the future and think of how we can bring additional revenue here. And the idea that Supervisor Patello just mentioned is what currently, I mean, this could all change over time. And again, this is just a purchase of property. This isn't agreeing to develop anything. But I got to tell you, what school districts in the Silicon Valley are doing is on their surplus property, they're building employee housing. So what's real hard to build housing and say you only want to have county employees or city employees or whatever it may be, you got to be very careful because you want to be inclusionary with all your housing. But if the county owns the property and potentially develops a condominium complex, an apartment complex, my understanding from what the city of San Jose is doing in the school district there is you can actually have subsidized housing for your employees and have your employees live there or your team members. So these are the things we got to think differently is the bottom line. We can't just think about how we have always been thinking in the past, and because that hasn't worked for housing. Housing has changed in the year 2020. We are literally in a housing crisis. You hear it all the time. Maybe a lot of people don't know what that means, but if you look at we had a stat earlier today about fertility rates, and one thing you got to be careful with that is that's the average family size. That's not how many people are living in a house. The average people, the amount of people living in a house has gone up dramatically, and I don't have those numbers in front of me, but I've seen them and I've posted them on my social media accounts. You'll see that we're in a housing crisis. What I'm encouraging this board to do is think outside of the box, think differently, and if you want to set a time limit on the ownership of this property to a certain amount of time and say, hey, if we don't come up with a great use for it in a certain amount of years, we'll punt it down the road. And, at the price that was negotiated here, I believe we'll at least break even, if not make some funds in the future. And I just encourage us all to think a little bit differently and have an open mind about this.
Mr. Chair, or I don't know if you were going to call.
Yeah, I want.
Go ahead.
I'll defer to you.
So my comment is actually in agreement with and support of what Supervisor Gilly was mentioning. I do believe we have to think out of the box. It's funny because earlier was mentioned that the statement "Work here, thrive here." I love that statement. To me, that statement isn't a comparison. It's not the goal is to compare ourselves to other communities, to Santa Clara especially. And, so there's obviously always a struggle with, bigger cities obviously being able to afford paying higher wages. It creates a whole other element of, in my mind, frustration between bigger cities and smaller communities that are limited in resources like ours. But my point to this situation is it is a piece of property that could have value, but I don't see us giving it really value until we actually support it with some kind of a goal or intention. So if we don't have a plan on why we're purchasing this property, then it could easily be a bad thing, right? Because we don't know. So if we were to anchor this to workforce housing, I think that makes sense. It's funny because one of the things that I've mentioned in trying to struggle with how do we retain staff and how do we give people a reason to stay living here. And I know obviously affordability is part of it. Is what if we created our own component of supporting workforce housing, and to a certain extent if people still want to leave because they'd rather get paid a whole lot more somewhere else, then maybe this would give them at least it would keep the benefit that we're offering, that we're investing in here. It wouldn't allow, if they want to leave, they can leave, but they obviously can't take this benefit with them. So it motivates automatically or anchors folks to want to stay here. So all that considered, it makes total sense to support workforce housing, but if that's what we want, then let's say that that's what we want in the intent and purpose of this property. And then at that point, I could see myself supporting it. That's all I have to share, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I look at it in a different aspect. I look at it as purchasing an asset. And when I look at this, in my time, I've worked with a company in Bakersfield, and we were enticed to move to Delano because the city at that time had an excess of property, and they were giving us a good deal to move over there, being that it was going to create sales tax for the city. So I look at it similar to this. We purchase a piece of property. We use it as leverage in the future when there are people that want to come down here or a business wants to relocate here. We can possibly entice them by doing something similar in that manner. The other part is if it has to be a labor workforce, we figure it that way, but anchoring it right now, I'm looking at if we were not to go ahead with this and another opportunity came 10 years from now, that land, the price of the land is going to be much higher. And historically, when you look at the peaks and the valleys, the land always increases. It rarely decreases for a long period of time. So that's what I'm looking at is more of an asset and using this for leverage to hopefully entice and attract manufacturing or businesses into our county for the economic development.
Mr. Chair, thank you. We have the community has had approved quite a few projects down Buena Vista Road. North Street Extension is about to be open. It's going to be a crazy road on Buena Vista Road. In fact, I commend you and I thank you, the board, for approving dollars to fix Buena Vista Road. All we're doing is just adding more roads, more cars, more traffic. Out on that part of the community, and I tell you, a lot of folks in that, along, Ranchito, Carnovo, Gonzalez, Miller, they just don't support the idea. Some ideas came up, and this will be my compromise, is that we designate that park for some type of, for kids, like a kids center, something, because to build more houses out there is just adding more stress. And if we were to build some type of affordable low-income housing, which I support 100%, but on the west side of Hollister, I just can't support that. You know, low-income housing needs to be distributed throughout the entire county, not just the west side of Hollister. And I just feel that we're going in that direction, and so I can't support that today, Mr. Chair, unless we put an amendment to this that it will be for the sole purpose of, for some type of sports complex for kids or something. But I just can't.
Can I interject just after Supervisor
Just
Gilliam?
briefly, I just want to be clear that if you go out to Southside Road and you take a look out there, we have affordable housing on Southside Road, which is in District 4. We are building more affordable housing. Currently, we're working on a project right now with CSWD on Southside Road. We have a farm worker labor camp that transitions into homeless housing, and we have mobile homes up there, and we also have the county yard there. So maybe we expand that area and we make this a county yard. I'm not saying that this needs to be for housing over there, Supervisor De La Cruz, so you know, and I want the community to know that we do work on spreading it out. You have worked on spreading it out. I've only been here 6 months, so I haven't approved any of that housing that I just mentioned in my district, but we support it and we want it all over our community, and workforce housing is critical, and these moves that we're making today are gonna impact us, you know, 10, 15 years down the road, I believe in a positive way, and I'm struggling with this one a little bit because I just hope you guys can understand, you know, that I think we just need to think differently. We really do. We need to just think a little bit differently. Just think about where we're headed in the future. And if we keep doing the same thing over and over and we expect different results, I don't think we're going to get different results. We just got to take a leap of faith. This is a smart. It's not a uncalculated risk. And in everything we do in business, there's a risk. We're all involved in business here. There's 1, 2, 3 business owners, and there's 2 folks that work for large businesses. And you guys know how it is. You know that we all take calculated risks, and you know we really need to start thinking about all of this just a little bit differently, and government, and those are my comments, Mr. Chair, and I'm not going to make any more. Thank you.
Supervisor Botello?
Yeah, well, you know, if we don't purchase the property, somebody else will, and in all likelihood, probably be a little bit more expedient in developing it in one fashion or another. And so it's kind of contrary to what you're kind of stating as, you know, a go slow growth approach. This is a small piece of property and a very small piece of what's really happening in our community. And I really think that these opportunities don't come along for the county very often. And you know, I hear you, Supervisor De La Cruz, a sports complex for the kids. Well, you got Brigantino Park down there that we could partner with the city, or we got our regional park. We got a park down there on Southside Road, and we're just not able to make those parks a reality. So why would we, you know, spend this kind of money and purchase a property? I would like to see us kind of look into setting us up for that opportunity to provide some workforce housing for, you know, public employees. And this, you know, how you go about doing that, I think there's some examples out there. Let's explore that. Acquire this asset and maybe put a deadline of 5 years, develop some sort of, you know, plan or something, and if we don't have something, then you dispose of it as surplus property and probably make money. But I honestly think we got to do something different than what we're doing as well, and that's why I've been very supportive of this for a long time.
Supervisor De La Cruz, this is in your district. Convince us.
Yeah, you know, I really do appreciate Supervisor Gilliam's comments from a business approach. You know, however, actually Mark and I were more likely second in command, so we make decisions just as our boss that the decisions I make or the ink that I put on a piece of paper does affect the 26 employees that we have in our office. Just because my name doesn't say boss, those decisions has a huge impact on the entire organization. And I take that with great pride because my boss has the confidence in me to do the job for him when he's not there. Notwithstanding those statements, and I understand Supervisor Patello's comments about thinking outside the box as Supervisor Gilio. I just, not in favor of it. However, you say a time limit to explore. I can go with that. I don't like it.
How many years?
I'm not gonna go for 3. I'm not gonna go for 5. I'll go for 3. We have smart people in our staff that come up with some ideas within 3 years. And then
smart, too.
what happens at the end of 3 years? We sell it.
Maybe we can all come up with some ideas and have some, no, I'm saying come up with ideas and have
Oh,
a
I just
study
say-
session and figure out how we can, how we can explore that. yeah.
I thought you were gonna say how we go buy
Mr.
it.
Chair.
Well,
So I'm willing to put on 3 years, Mr. Chair, on it.
you know, real estate, I'm not a expert, but it does increase and decrease, and times aren't the best right now. And, you know, we possibly may be going into a little bit of a downturn. So I think in 3 years, we might not be better off than we are now. So, you know, when I'm looking at a business decision, I can't support just 3 years, because after 3 years, if we're going to be forced either to sell it, and if it's not sold at a gain, then it's a loss, of course, or we're going to be forced into making a decision that might not be the right decision. So that's kind of how I'm looking at it. That's my opinion, not the board's opinion, but that's kind of how I look at things. And I think, you know, you might be second guessing that too, Jaime, because you've seen the property increase and decrease here. It always increases in the end, but that's long term, not short term.
My comments, Mr. Chair, is I agree with Supervisor Dela Cruz that 3 years gives us a time to consider. It in my mind, it doesn't have to be a hard deadline as far as, well, I should say there needs to be to a certain extent a strong motivator. Because if we're saying 3 years, 3 years in my mind isn't saying we have to sell it. 3 years says let's start thinking about this and not waste time. Let's start having a real serious conversation about what we're going to do with that property. Because ultimately the worry is that property is going to, you know, be done outside of this body and, you know, new elected folks. And then at that point, we don't know what the actual benefit is. So it's an assumption. And, you know, Supervisor Gaylor stated clearly, we make risks, but just the same, they're calculated, right? We think a lot about what the implications are, and we own the negative consequences of our choices. So this puts us outside of that realm because we can't own it. We're not going to be here. Or under the assumption that we might not be here. So either way, in my mind, if we said 3 years, it sets a good deadline. It gives us a real focus and intent to make that decision. But just the same, it puts us in a really good position to make sure that we're the decision-making body that's involved in that property. And the last statement that I have, Mr. Chair, is I really do value Supervisor Dela Cruz's 16 years and the experience that he has and his connection with all of his constituents. That said, I want him to be directly involved because it is his district, and to a certain extent, that's why we need his feedback and how this is the purpose of this property is used. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I don't disagree with any of that, what you just said, Supervisor Hernandez. And what I would suggest is probably, how about 3 years and have a review process of where we're at?
Yeah,
And
that's
then,
fine.
Yeah.
Who knows? It may be the site of the new library for what we know.
Yeah.
You don't know. And, well, it might be cheaper than just to take down this jail. We had a quote for over $500,000. That was a few years ago. So, you know, who knows? That might be the logical place for it. I don't know, but you know, one of the things that I felt that we probably should have done a lot differently during my time on this board is review some of the properties that the county has. We have some properties out there, and if you have a periodic review, maybe even just once a year or once every 18 months, and just kind of review how we're utilizing those assets and, you know, what the possibilities are. This would be part of the surplus of properties that we have, and how can we best serve the public, and that's what I would suggest.
Is there any motion on the floor?
I make a motion that we support item number 18, acquisition of real property located on Buena Vista Road from Grant Rock in the amount of $450,000 with an amendment to hold a review process within 3 years if the property hasn't been purposed, and maybe during that time, I don't know, can we include some kind of review, like maybe every year up until the 3rd year?
You sure can. It's your motion.
Yeah.
And that includes all the actions that were on the recommended staff action item as well, including the
Okay.
budget.
So that's a long amendment, but,
Yeah.
you know, review process.
Annually.
Yeah, and then annually up to a 3rd year.
With everything that's also listed on the agenda item, the CEQA finding and the purchase agreement and the budget transfer.
Correct.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to second, then I have a comment before we make a motion.
Go ahead.
Thank you. With all due respect to my fellow supervisors, the intent is not to add years or talk about what we want to do. The intent here today is to purchase. Once a motion is made to purchase, it's game over. That's the way I look at it. I'll be honest. I'm going to be honest with you guys.
It is.
And I'll be honest. You won, Supervisor Botello, by us making a motion that to purchase it. Everything else is icing on the cake, the reality. Notwithstanding on that note, I really don't want to purchase this property. We are in no business buying property. However, sometimes it is wise to buy a property because development is occurring out there. It really is. Let's not kid ourselves. So it actually might be wise to purchase this property just for the purpose of having something out there to at least have a county presence in that part of the community. So I'm going to support that motion just because of my comments, and might contradict my earlier statement, but I do believe I prefer to have a presence out there than not have a presence, knowing that the city of Hollister is going to pick all that up later on. And that's my final comments, Mr. Chairman.
What's the wish of the board?
I'll second the motion.
No,
He
I already seconded it.
He already seconded.
Oh, he already did?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
All in favor?
Yeah, there.
Aye.
No. Motion passes
4-1.
4-1. Takes us to our regular agenda. We'll start off with number 19, Behavioral Health Department.
Good morning. Thank you for letting us have this piece of time today to do this informational presentation. And this is related to the building of the new Behavioral Health Center. And I think probably what's of most interest to you is the financing plan. So we have some people here today to help us do that presentation. And I'd like to both thank and introduce the people that helped put this together and the people that will be speaking on this issue for you today. I'm not used to having so much help, so it's much appreciated. So we have Jerry Avalos from Vanner Construction Management. And I also want to thank Dulce Alonso, who did a great deal of our support work in county administration, Stuart Petrie, and then we also have Gabriel Orozco, our accountant 3, who I think, Gabriel, you have the first part to start us off with. And then I'll be available to help answer questions if necessary.
Good morning, board, chair members. So my name is Gabriel Orozco. I'm the accountant 3 for the Behavioral Health Department. and I'll be kicking off this presentation that you guys requested last board meeting on a couple of the items regarding the financing and kind of the project overview as we have it right now. So, as discussed previously, this is the rough agenda that we're going to go over. The overview of the COP, so the debt servicing that's going to go towards funding the building, total project cost, the repayment, the funding for the building, and construction schedule overview that Banner is going to be providing on where we stand right now with the project and a couple of dates down the road that we can expect future items to be coming. So just a little bit of history of the project. We initially, over the last couple of years, have been making moves toward the project, and the first one was the land acquisition, which happened in 2017. We paid roughly $312,000 for the property. It's located, as you can see, right across from the parking lot where we currently have our facilities, and it's near all the Health and Human Services and all the social service areas located close nearby. It's near the homeless shelter for anyone that's receiving services in our facilities, and near the unemployment office and any other social services in that area. This is roughly a couple of pictures of the location where the facility is going to be located. As you can see, it's right now it's just a field, but hopefully we can start getting some movement on there and start the construction on there soon enough. And it's located, like I just mentioned, right across the parking lot of our current location. And then with that, I'll be handing it over to Stuart to talk a little bit about the COP.
Good morning, Chairman and the board. Currently, as it stands, the Behavioral Health Department has about $3.5 million towards capital improvements that they have built up in their reserve. This total project cost, which I believe Gabriel will be going over with Vanner for the budget, is approximately $14 million, meaning we need to finance approximately $10.5 million to move forward with the project. County staff has been working with K&N Finance and Bond Counsel, which those contracts had been brought to the board earlier this year to move forward with looking into opportunities to finance this project. The plan currently is to move forward with a certificate of participation issuance, similar to the jail project that was similar to the jail issuance that was completed earlier this year to finish off the jail construction expansion project. Just a little overview. Again, the certificates of participation are a tax-exempt lease financing agreement. These are sold to investors as securities that actually resemble bonds, so very similar to issuing bonds. We will be using the San Benito County Financing Corp again. This is what we used at our last issuance at the beginning of the year for the jail project. Basically what happens in this type of deal, you have the financing corp will hold a lease agreement for the property, and the county will make payments on that rental lease agreement. Just kind of wanted to explain that structuring of that debt servicing a little bit. Additionally, with this, we are looking at potential collateral. We had to do that with the jail issuance as well. We actually used the RMA Sheriff's Office building as collateral for that COP issuance. Currently, we are looking at using the old portion of the jail off of 710 Flynn Road. That the approximate fair market value of that property is equal to the $10.5 million that we would need to finance. This would be released after the actual completion of construction of the behavioral health building, and that would be the new collateralized asset once construction is completed, releasing the old jail as collateral so that we can use it on other potential projects if needed.
Can we use this jail right here? I'm just kidding.
I don't know how much that one's worth.
Good idea. Good idea, Jim.
So currently, we're working on the preliminary official statement and compiling all the financial data. After that is completed, the next step would be to go to meet with Standard & Poor's or one of the other accrediting agencies. Last time we met with Standard & Poor's, it would be around the week of December 2nd. Additionally, more information would be brought to the board for the actual financing resolution and to allow the county to go ahead and issue the COPs, and that would be approximately at the December 10th meeting. And then our schedule has the sale week of January 13th, and hopefully the closing would be January 27th, which is perfect timing for the construction and process of this building. And I believe I think Gabriel is going to come back up to speak on the funding sources for that the Behavioral Health Department is going to allocate towards paying off the debt servicing. So thank you.
Thanks, Stuart. So as Stuart mentioned, and as we've discussed, the total cost of the estimated total cost of the building is roughly $14 million. And then these are some rough renderings of what the building is going to be looking like from our architecture. As you can see, it's going to be bigger than our current facility, so we're going to be able to house our current staff and some more additional staff. So we're going to be able to provide some more services in this new facility. So the $14 million figure, so we're going to need to finance that, and this is how we're going to finance it. Our primary source of funding that's going to be
Can
going,
I, before we get into this part of the financing, on the 14 million, on the contingency, I imagine the contingency is included in the 14 million? And what percentage? Is it 10, 15%? 8.5%?
All right.
Get up there. Get up there.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Jerry Avalos with Banner Construction Management. Yeah, so to answer your question, Supervisor, it's 5% contingency. We add a little more contingency because there was a stem wall that had to be included in the project that is now going to be part of the
Yeah,
contingency.
you know, that's one of the things I really sweat out because, you know, once you get into the construction, all of a sudden there's a change order or cost overrun, and then 5% is not enough. And what is our, maybe staff knows what our experience has been with the new jail as far as burning a contingency? Just so we get an idea if that's a reasonable approach.
We're actually going to be bringing an item at the next board meeting on an overview of the budget for the jail. We had, I believe, a 5% contingency, but a portion of that was ate up through insurance costs. That was the initial first change order. But I believe the total project has stayed under that 5% contingency. But we are going to be bringing a slight change because of that increase in insurance costs. So the actual construction was what we were under that 5% contingency.
Mr. Chair, if I may, as well. And if the board recalls, we actually had some updates to the board. We were less than 1% for a period of time. And one of, I think, the key components or the key reasons why that was the way it was is we hired Vanner to do an analysis first before we actually went out, and to make some adjustments on plans to work through things prior to us actually moving forward with it. So basically changing some items that would have been very costly if we would have been in the construction phase. So that was, I just wanted to make sure the board was aware there was some preliminary work done in advance to verify potential cost overruns.
So, you know, because when we started this conversation, I think we were looking at a $12 million price tag. And are we confident that, you know, a 5% contingency is be enough for to move this project all the way through? Or eight,
Yeah,
I
it's-
mean.
it's
I'm
8.5%.
sorry, 8.5?
Yeah.
Boy, that's, I always kind of felt 10 was the number, but,
So when you're looking at new construction on a greenfield site like this is, the rule of thumb is about 5%. When you're going into renovations, tenant improvement, you go up as high as 10%, and that's the right number because you don't know what you're going to run into. So, but for new projects and a greenfield, usually 5% is the rule of thumb.
okay.
All right, thanks, Jerry. Thanks, Stuart. So, to continue back on this presentation, we're going to be discussing the funding. So, our primary funding source that we're going to be using for this project is going to be through MHSA, so Mental Health Service Act money. So, as I kind of mentioned last time I was here, this funding is coming from the 1% tax on the wealthy Californians to make over $1 million, and that tax money is then pulled into a fund, which is then distributed to all the different counties. So right here I have a breakdown going from 2012-2013 fiscal year to projected future years 2023 and 2024. As you can see, our MHSA funding has been increasing over the course of those years from 2.5 million to a possible projected 5 million. I have actual numbers and projected numbers. So currently, this coming 19-20 fiscal year, we're expected to receive about $4 million. And out of that pool of funding, we're able to transfer 20% to our capital tax project, which is primarily going straight towards the building. So the next chart that I have here has a running year kind of transfer possibility that we could be moving over to the building. So as you can see, every year we're able to transfer over a little bit over $500,000 to this building that we're trying to construct. And how we arrive at this is that we're able to transfer 20% of a 5-year average of MHSA dollars. So for instance, the 17-18 transfer is a 5-year average of 20% from the 2012-2013 fiscal year MHSA funding all the way to the 2016-2017 fiscal year. So as you can see, since our MHSA funding has been increasing, the transfer amount has also been increasing. We won't necessarily be using the total amount to fund the building, but as you can see, we are going to have a substantial amount there. We could also leave it back in our other components to go towards operational expenses, so it could be hiring more staff or providing more services. So the next item that I have on here is kind of some rough projections on the yearly and the monthly cost repayment for the servicing, the COP servicing for the building. So I have a couple of years, and then I have some rough averages. So our average yearly cost to finance the debt servicing on a new building is going to be $555,862 for a year. That comes out monthly to $46,321. And right underneath that, I have our capital tech facilities transfer, and that's a yearly and then a monthly. So if you can see monthly, going off the averages, we should have enough every month and every year to cover the debt servicing on the building, and even have a little bit extra if we want to shelter some of that money, or if we want to leave it back to go towards services and services. So the last little part that we had on our project is this construction schedule, and this is where I'm going to hand it off to Jerry to speak a little bit about the project overview and any areas that you guys might have questions on.
Thank you. So just a quick overview of the project and where we're at. We're brought on board to develop a master schedule, help develop a project budget, do bid marketing, and estimate verification. We went out to bid on the project. We have the modular building bid package, which was set up prior to us coming on board, and the site package. And we went out to bid on August 1st, had favorable bid on September 12th, and received an NTP Board of Supervisor approval prior to that, and actually NTP was issued on October 10th. So we're kind of ahead of schedule that you see up there. This master schedule was developed back in June. So we're hitting our targets, and we're staying ahead of schedule. The next, the column on your right, which is the site bid package, we're targeting having the site bid or site package completed with agency approvals by November 15th and going out to bid by November 15th and receiving bids somewhere in January, mid-January. And then starting that work in mid-February, therefore staying ahead of the modular building, getting the engineered pad completed somewhere around the April-May timeframe, and doing all the underground site utilities. So the modular building, when it comes out to the project, is the pad's ready to go and it's ready to be assembled. And then the project is showing to be, overall project is being shown to be complete early part of 2021. Any questions?
Mr. Chair, I got a question. It's sorry for being late to the game on this. The bids have been accepted already, right? Where are we? Are we selected?
Yes, so the modular portion of the modular building portion of this project, the bids have been received and the bid has been awarded.
It's been awarded. Is it a
Correct.
local firm?
No, it's not a local firm. It's Silver Creek is the modular building company that provided the bid, and I believe their factories in Riverside. That's where they're building.
What's the difference?
modular-
I don't know if I missed it somewhere. How much of a difference was between the local and this one?
So the first time this project went out to bid, there was no bids received.
That's right.
And so they tried to negotiate with a modular company, and the bids were still too high.
Okay.
The price was too high. This time, somewhere around 10 modular companies were solicited and marketed to, and only one bidder came into bid, and that was Silver Creek, unfortunately. So any of the more local companies did not even submit a bid.
Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry. And then the last slide was any questions that the board or the chairman might have for us.
Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. This is another presentation, Council of Governments, about the Fraser Lake Airport, Air Park, I'm sorry.
Mr. Chairman, I think Supervisor Gilio was supposed to introduce Veronica on this item.
No need to introduce. I can introduce myself. That's
Okay, all right. I was only kidding.
I'll leave him off the hook.
Surprised me, but okay.
Yeah.
Jim, can you introduce her, please?
So good morning, Chairman and members of the board. Veronica Lezama with the San Benito County Airport Land Use Commission, as well as with the Council of San Benito County Governments. And we wanted to start off by extending our appreciation to the board for allowing us the opportunity to present the draft airport land use compatibility plan for the Fraser Lake Air Park for your consideration and feedback this morning. Also, if you have any questions throughout the presentation, please do not hesitate to let us know. Otherwise, we'd be happy to take your questions at the end. So as part of the presentation, I will provide the board with some background information about Fraser Lake Air Park, followed by the roles, responsibilities, and limitations of the San Benito County Airport Land Use Commission. Then the purpose of the Airport Land Use Compatibility Plan for Fraser Lake Air Park. I will then introduce Mr. Walter Windus, the consultant hired to update the compatibility plan, who will be going over the draft policies and maps, which essentially set the framework for the document, followed by the public outreach process and project schedule, and lastly, answer any additional questions that you may have. So we'll start with some information about Fraser Lake Air Park. It is located northwest of the Hollister Municipal Airport. The land surrounding the air park is located within the jurisdiction of the County of San Benito. The airpark is privately owned for public use. It consists of a board of directors as well as an airport manager. The facility is used primarily for recreational purposes, and it consists of two runways. The first is the only FAA-approved water surface runway in the western United States, and the second is the only public irrigated turf runway in the state of California. So the role of the San Benito County Airport Land Use Commission is to protect public health, safety, and welfare of not only the pilots, but also the inhabitants of the land surrounding the two local airports by ensuring the orderly expansion of that land. Now, the public's protection is accomplished through the development and adoption of an airport land use compatibility plan, which we've prepared for Fraser Lake Airpark over the last several months. So before we go into the specifics about the compatibility plan, I did want to briefly go over some of the limitations of the San Benito County Airport Land Use Commission. So when considering development projects, the Airport Land Use Commission does not can only find a project as either consistent or inconsistent with the compatibility plan. Our commission cannot approve or disapprove projects. That authority lies with the County of San Benito. The commission also has no authority over the operations of the airport or over existing land uses, even if those are incompatible with the plan. So compatibility plans are essential for promoting just that, compatibility between the airport and the land that surrounds them. The purpose of the plan is to minimize the public's exposure to excessive noise and safety hazards. They are required for all public use airports, regardless if they are privately or publicly owned. They are also used by planners when conducting reviews of development proposed, again, in the area surrounding the airports. We refer to this area as the airport influence area, which falls under the jurisdiction of the Airport Land Use Commission, and we'll be going over that boundary a little later in the presentation. So compatibility plans must also be guided by the state Airport Land Use Planning Handbook, which addresses 4 compatibility factors, and those include noise, safety, airspace protection, and overflight. And before our aviation consultant comes up to go over the 4 compatibility factors, I did want to take a minute to introduce him. As you can see from this particular slide, Mr. Walter Windus has extensive aviation experience. Particularly, he updated the compatibility plans for the Mineta San Jose International Airport, Moffett Federal Airfield. He also updated the current comprehensive land use plan for us back in 2001. He's past chairperson of the Santa Clara Airport Land Use Commission, retired professional engineer, current flight instructor, and current aircraft mechanic. He's also past manager of a couple of airports and retired as vice president of a high-tech company, so obviously very qualified. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Walter Windus, unless you have any questions.
Very good. I just want to make sure the board was aware early on in this process, Supervisor Gilio and I made sure that, you know, the compatibility of that operation at Gilroy Gates worked with this plan, and fortunately it fits.
Thank you very much, Veronica. Good morning, Chairman and Supervisors. The original comprehensive land use plan was adopted in 2001, and it's been approximately 18 years have transpired between that plan and today. As a consequence of the time interval, several changes have occurred, primarily in the Airport Land Use Planning Handbook, and specifically the safety zones have changed their shape as a consequence of statistical studies of where aircraft accidents occur. The other item that came to our attention over the years was the definition of the airport influence area. The airport influence area, as we'll show a little later, was based on a geometric figure centered on the airport. And it wasn't an easy task for the county planning department to determine whether or not the project was inside or outside the airport influence area. If the project was outside the airport influence area, then of course airport land use plan had no impact on it. The third item was GPS compatibility, GIS compatibility. We wanted to take advantage of that since we had the opportunity. Four compatibility policies areas are noise, exposure to noise attributable to aircraft operations, primarily flying overhead, safety and protection of people on the ground and in the aircraft from accidents, airspace protection to avoid hazards being created in the airspace for airplanes operating around the airport, and overflight policies dealing with annoyances that some people have just by the sight of an airplane flying overhead. I want to start off by showing you the airport noise contours, and there's no change in from the previous land use plan. So it's forecast that the aircraft noise contours will remain the same. The reason for that is that in our analysis of the potential operations, number of aircraft operating at Fraser Lake Airport, we predicted there'd be no change from that we forecast 18 years ago. So we shifted the number of operations forward by 18 years. As a consequence of that, there's no change in the aircraft noise contours. As far as the policies go, there's been a couple of very minor policy changes as a consequence of reviewing the most recent Airport Land Use Planning Handbook recommendations. So the changes in there are of minimal impact. Airport safety zones are a different topic in the sense that the changes in the Airport Land Use Planning Handbook from 2001 to 1993 to 2011 were significant. And you can see, looking at the existing safety zones, they're basically rectangular areas coming off from the airport and extending out about 4,500 feet from the end of the runway. The current airport safety zones in the 2011 Airport Land Use Handbook have changed significantly in two respects. They've added the turning safety zones, abbreviated TSZ, which are the fan-shaped areas coming off the end of the runway. They've also reduced the length of the outer safety zone, but have increased the width of it slightly. The consequence of that is that the total land area off the airport property impacted by the safety zones has increased approximately 40%, and the majority of that increase is due to the addition of the turning safety zones. As far as the policies go on the safety zones, they have changed significantly, and you can see the changes in red there. For the most part, the good news is they're not incompatible with the current general plan, county general plan. The one exceptions, of course, are the runway protection zones. The majority of that property is on airport property, and the inner safety zones. It also turns out that those are the two safety zones where aircraft accidents most often occurred, so statistically. So we wanted to, the planning handbook wanted to minimize the potential exposure to people on the ground from the occurrence of those accidents. The Part 77 surfaces do not change from the previous plan. The Part 77 surfaces you can think of as being an inverted cone providing airspace protection as aircraft come to the vicinity of the airport and then make their pattern approach to land on the runway. So those services, the height of those services are identified as heights above mean sea level, and any development that's permitted out in those areas has to stay below that, that elevation. The good news is except right in the vicinity of the airport on the approach paths, most of the other space out there is more than 150 feet above ground level. And it's quite unlikely that any building will be constructed out in there, the area, with that kind of a height. We've also increased the definition, I guess, of the height in the Part 77 services to make it easier for the planners to determine whether or not a project is going to impact any aircraft operations at the airport. So the change between the earlier land use plan and this land use plan is an increase in precision in the definitions. The definitions have not changed, though. The other area that we have made a significant change is in the definition of the airport influence area. The previous plan, and most commonly used in these plans, is the outer edge of the Part 77 surface, and it's that oval-shaped line in green. Because that's the area where aircraft are most likely to be operating. And the definition of an airport influence area is area on the surface that could be impacted by aircraft operations associated with the airport. Hollister uses the oval area as their airport influence area. As I said, we found over the years that the county planners had a bit of a difficulty in determining whether or not a project was inside the airport influence area. So we took a different approach and identified the airport influence area based on roads, railroads, and rivers, and county boundary. And I have the slide up now showing the airport influence area. And basically it uses Lover's Lane, Shore Road, extended out to the railroad tracks up to the Pajaro River, a short stint on the river, and then Miller Canal up to the county boundary. The county boundary then coming around and intersecting with the starting point. As I said, the airport influence area is supposed to encompass all areas that are going to be impacted by aircraft. You can see we purposely overlaid the Part 77 services or the old airport influence area on top of the proposed airport influence area, and there are some areas that are not covered. There's also some areas that are covered that it's not likely to have aircraft operations. Regarding the second point, because we wanted to use fixed geometric boundaries, we had to include some areas that aircraft are not likely to overfly. The areas that have not been included in the airport influence area are areas where, number one, development is not likely to occur at a height that would impact aircraft operations, specifically in the northwest area of the airport. In the southern part of the airport there, south of Shore Road, there's very few aircraft that operate in that area, so it should not be an issue with the airport. The advantage, of course, is that it frees up that area from the constraints of the land use plan. I do want to mention the two supervisors were at the Airport Land Use Commission meeting, and I think it was Mr. that asked the question that I was not able to answer, and the question was, what's the difference in surface area between the old airport influence area and the new airport influence area? I did do that calculation, and the new airport influence area is 76 acres less than the old airport influence area, which is slightly more than 1% less. So I think we can basically assume that the land encompassed by the airport influence area remains essentially the same. But I did want to answer that question, so. Are there any questions on that specifically, or we can catch them at the end if there are?
Sure. Mr. Chair, if I may? This is a general question, so, and I should know the answer to this already, and I don't. How many flights a day do we average out of this airport?
We currently operate 10,900 a year, as I recall.
That's takeoffs and landings?
Yes.
It could be the same plane taking off and landing 5 times, or it could be different planes, or trying to figure out the usage and then how much we're going to impact the surrounding areas. One of the projects that you are aware of that I was concerned about was, it's made it through the board now, was the a hemp processing facility that borders that area in the old, I think it's called Gilroy Gates area.
Right.
We had already talked about this at LUAC, but I just wanted to, I want to make sure that the board understands the impact that we're having on the surrounding land. And I also know that this is a state mandate. This isn't something that we have a lot of say or input in, but we need to understand that anything we do out there could impact future either commercial growth or, you know, anything else we want to do. And we just need to be aware of the why we're receiving this presentation. And more importantly, I just wanted to know how much it's used, and I didn't know that. So you said about 10,000 flights a year?
Right. And you make a good point.
30, thank you.
Those are 10,000 operations. And an operation is defined as either a takeoff or a landing. So if an airplane comes up and let's say a based aircraft takes off, flies to Hollister for lunch and comes back and lands at Fraser Lake, that's 2 operations.
Gotcha.
You brought up another point that I wanted to cover. This land use plan by statute has no impact on existing development. So anything that has been developed out there, any development that's been approved by the planning department is not impacted by this plan.
Actually, Mr. Chair, Mr. Chair, that I was going to ask a question to your follow-up. Your question is that it currently does not impact current development. How about future developments?
Yes, of course. That's the purpose of the plan.
So it will affect future developments.
Absolutely. But I also want to say that except for the runway protection zone and the inner safety zones, as far as residential development goes, there's no impact beyond current general plan policies.
And so if somebody has a house, a single-story house right now, and they want to build the second story, will they be allowed to do it under the new plan?
If the county allows it under the general plan, yes.
Well, okay.
That's the short answer. Okay. Now, I don't want to lead you to believe that there's no impacts at all. There, in the development policies relating to agricultural productive, there are some policies in there that are not compatible in some of the safety zones, specifically policies that permit development for people with restricted mobility or large concentrations of people. So, you know, those things would not be allowed in certain areas, but they would be allowed in other areas.
For example, if we wanted to build a sports park out there, I'm not saying that this is the case or it's even been considered, but if you wanted to build a soccer stadium or a softball where you had 5,000 people congregating on a weekend, you probably wouldn't be able to do it, right?
Right. Yeah, it could not be in the. I'd have to look at the specific policies, but there are safety zones where it would not be permitted.
Got it.
Now, it wouldn't exclude it from all safety zones. You know, at San Jose, for instance, they have the Abaya soccer stadium, but it's off to the side of the airport.
Not in a turning area, yeah.
Right. It's not off the ends.
So then the residents have been,
I'm sorry?
the residents have been given notice that their properties for future development is being compromised.
That's actually the next part of the presentation, so you got ahead of me a little bit. So yes, so as far as the outreach process is concerned, we began our efforts early in the development process, just for that purpose. So we established a project development team composed of county planning staff, our airport manager for Fraser Lake Airpark, Airport Land Use Commission staff, and our consultant. So we have had an opportunity to talk to, county planning, just to make sure that, it's kind of in line with what the general plan allows. We also developed a project website. The link is provided there for your information. Per Director Giglio's request, we put up some bilingual project signs near the project site. Back in May. During that same month, we mailed letters to all of the property owners located within the airport influence area, notifying them of the proposed project. We also scheduled one-on-one meetings with those property owners that showed interest in the project. So there was about maybe 10 property owners that we scheduled 1-hour meetings. And what staff did is we actually printed a map. We requested their assessor parcel number. We printed a map, and we sat down with them and went over the specific impacts to their particular property. We also did a press release, which was published in the local media in September. And then unless there's any questions, I
Real
briefly
quick on
wanted
the
to go over
outreach,
this.
what were the results that you heard from the surrounding property owners? Did you get concerns? Did you get feedback, or?
Definitely concerns at the beginning, but once they understood what the plan, what the purpose of the plan was, a lot of the property owners weren't planning to develop, commercial buildings or anything of that sort. They were more concerned whether they can add additional dwelling units to their property. And our answer to that was if the existing general plan allows it, so does the plan, for the exception of a couple of the runway protection zones. But those protection zones, if I may, are located within the airport property. So you wouldn't have development in those areas anyway. So in the orange and in the light brown, and those were some of their concerns, but they appreciated us taking the time to set up a whole hour for them to address any concerns about the project.
Thank you.
And if are there any other questions, I can move forward with the project schedule. So the Airport Land Use Commission released the draft compatibility plan and draft initial study at their September meeting. Over the last several months, we have presented to several local boards, and the next part of the process consists of closing the public comment period. And then at the December meeting, the San Benito Airport Land Use Commission, which is also the Council of Governments, will be considering adopting the compatibility plan and initial study. And then just so you know, once the Airport Land Use Commission adopts the compatibility plan, the County of San Benito, as the land use authority surrounding the airport, does have the responsibility to enforce the compatibility plan, and that is established in the Public Utilities Code. Specifically, the listed government code mandates the county to incorporate the compatibility provisions into their general plan or specific plan within 180 days of the Airport Land Use Commission adopting the plan. And we do plan on working closely with county planning staff to provide any assistance if needed. And that concludes our presentation. We'd be happy to answer any additional questions that you may have.
Briefly, if you happen to know the SB2 funds, is there any chance that we can use some of these to get that our general plan updated? The planning funds for the that we talk about at COG for the regional agencies?
I believe so. Yeah, I believe there's about $50,000 available in funding for something like that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Chair, Veronica?
Yeah.
Sorry for asking a dumb question. So this is needed because the state's mandated?
What happened with this particular document is, the last update was in 2001. What Walter mentioned in his presentation is those safety zones have changed since with the existing document. if I can find them very briefly. So this is the existing plan. As you can see, it's extremely difficult to identify where, if you wanted to propose a project, where that would even be located. And so with the new guidance that is provided by the State Planning Handbook, they did provide some new policies that would reflect a change in the safety zones, and this is what is being proposed now. And as Walter mentioned, the area that would be impacted is actually reduced a little bit, but by 1%, not significant, but there are changes in the safety zones, just to kind of compress them more, if you can see from this diagram.
Perfect, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Presentation only.
That's it. Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Did you do public comment?
Oh, I'm sorry. Public comment? Seeing none? Bring it back. Thank you.
Actually, Mr. Chair, I got one simple question. If the airport expands, would that mean surrounding areas will be affected?
I have no idea.
Well, on that note, Mr. Chair.
You have to- Well, here's,
Yes, the short answer is yes. If the aircraft runways change primarily in length, it would clearly cause a change in the safety zones locations, not shapes, but locations. Let's assume that the runways increased in length, and the safety zones would move out as a consequence of that. The other item that would change would be the Part 77 surfaces, because they're based on runway configuration. There is no plan to change any of the runway configurations. Certainly no plan to increase the length of the runways.
Who approves changes, modifications to
That
the
would be
airport?
the county planning department.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
thank you. Go to number 21 from the Resource Management Agency.
Good morning again, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This is the adopting plans and specifications for the Hospital Road Bridge. This is federally funded for us in its entirety, $12.5 million, and we would like to move ahead with this project. We've received just recently a notice of all the funding available, so we're ready to go.
Thank
Ask
you,
for your approval.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I just wanted to thank you for your hard work getting these bridge projects back on track, and it's great to see one coming this far forward. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I just want to thank Supervisor Gilia for leading the charge in this. It's way overdue. It's something that all your former supervisors wanted to get done, and hopefully it gets done, within next year. Thank you, and thank you, Harry.
Is there any public comment? Bring it back to the board. What's the wish of the board?
I would like to make a motion that we approve staff recommendation on this item.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
5-0. Number 22, you can stay up there. Resource Management Agency.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, this is a follow-up from our discussion at the last meeting where we put forth $8 million in funding from Measure G and $3 million from the Enterprise Fund. This essentially shifts $1.5 million from the John Smith realignment project to Fairview and McCloskey, other projects that we all felt were more in need of work initially. So with that, I'm able to answer any questions you may have, and we recommend your approval so we can move ahead with these.
Any questions on item 22? Any public comment? Bring it back to the board. Any questions?
Do we want to go over to the specific segments, maybe on a map, or do you want to bring that later? I'm sorry, I was distracted a little bit with the question on the last item.
Yeah, at this point, there's a section of McCloskey Road near, is it Hillside? There's some very bad sections over there we would concentrate on. Because we have not done plans on this one as much as we had on the rest of the projects, I couldn't give you an exact mileage. That would be one primary area. The other one is to complement other work we're doing on Fairview if we have any gaps, and also on Shore. So that's our goal, is to get as much as we can out of this additional $1.5 million on those very necessary roads.
I definitely support it. We were talking yesterday about the Rosa Morada and headed south. So Rosa Morada to McCloskey as a section, then perhaps McCloskey up to Santa Ana or so as a section, because those are really bad places on Fairview Road. So I just wanted to make my comments on, and I think that those are really important sections that we get done, and then maybe with the potential landfill agreement, we can explore, McCloskey in those areas as well. But those are just my thoughts, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Supervisor Bertello?
Yes, what concerns me a little bit, and I think this is the way we want to go, is McCloskey Road. Have we kind of studied the width of the road as far as, having the trucks going, taking that, which I fully, certainly support, because it's less miles, road miles on county roads and more on a state highway. But if you take McCloskey right now, is it a little tight if you have trucks going in both directions as far as the width of that road?
It is tight, and that's one of the things we'll be looking at. And again, why I'm a little concerned about saying exactly how many miles we'll do, because if we have to also do some widening, it will impact the project.
Yeah,
The intent
I
is
think
to make
we're
it as
in need.
safe as possible for the truck traffic.
Yeah, I hope we look into that real closely as we redo that road.
Also on the same note, Supervisor Bertello, when you turn right from McCloskey onto Fairview, we're looking at we're kind of still in the investigation phase, but something similar to the side lane, just like you have on Fairview coming out of Hillcrest. There's a little acceleration zone.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yes, sir?
Just real quick, I think there's a lot of moving parts on this also, because as I learned that the Santana Ranch development has to put in a light there at McCloskey.
Yes, sir.
There's a lot going on there. Then we also have Measure G at Fairview and Fallon. So I think what we're doing today is authorizing this expenditure, and then we're trusting our staff and our team to come up with a great plan to bring back to us in the future. That's
Yes.
my thought.
Yeah, I was going to reiterate that, Mr. Chair. I was going to actually highlight those items, and I wanted to just to inform the board that the board requested that this item come back to this meeting today, have it actionable, and I want to thank Harry for getting it on the agenda along with our staff. Stuart has done a lot of legwork to try to really understand all the funding and working with Kathleen as well on integrated ways to address how much money we have still in reserve. So it's been a lot of work over a very short period of time. So I think it's a good plan. Obviously, we'll come back with a little bit more later, but at least it's actionable and we're moving forward with it.
Again, just for the record, to bring up what Supervisor Gilio was stating, was the Measure G funds would be a stoplight at Fallon. Anderson Homes, they would be responsible for a stoplight at McCloskey and at 500 Homes. And then Hillcrest at a little bit over 5.5, I believe. So those are the additional things that will happen on the Fairview corridor. Any other questions from anyone?
Mr. Chair, just a quick question. I had a meeting with some of the residents on Buena Vista Road yesterday. I know Buena Vista's not on here, but it might relate to this, and I don't know McCloskey. I don't drive through there a lot, but what I noticed in the Buena Vista Road, it's elevated compared to homeowners' property, and so when it starts raining, the water starts going into the homeowner's property. Is that an issue that's going to happen at McCloskey too?
I can speak to that. It has, during the 2017, was it? We had over by the new school there. That was the only home that was flooded.
That was a lot of rain.
Yeah, and that was I'm trying to think of exact location, but you know where the new school is? Right there, when you turn to the right, the home over, as I spent some time out there and sandbagged with them.
Yeah, okay.
That
All
was
right.
the only thing on Fairview, or on McCloskey.
I'm across.
I'll bring it back to the board. What's the wish of the board?
Chair, I make the motion, I move that we take the staff recommendation to transfer the funds. I'm sorry, my mic was off. Mr. Chair, I move we accept the staff recommendation for the transfer of funds for the impacts of the landfill as mentioned in the staff report.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
5-0. Thank you. We'll head to a closed session. Can you please report out a report?
Yes, there's two closed sessions. Number 23, closed session, conference with labor negotiators as agency designated representatives, Michael McDougall, Ray Espinoza, Edgar Nolasco, Stuart Patry, Elvia Barocio, and Barbara Thompson, Employee Organization, Local, SEIU Local 521, pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6. And 24, closed session, conference legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation pursuant to subdivisions D2 and E2 of Government Code Section 54956.9, number of cases won, and potential of additional litigation regarding the master tax agreement currently being litigated in Ward Homes and BMC Promise Way.
Is there any public comment? See none, we'll head to closed session.